Thank you for that most generous welcome. And let me repeat my thanks to my team, Freddie Howe, Mark Lancaster, Harriet Baldwin, Tobias Elwood, Oliver Dowden, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, Andrew Griffiths, and Annabel Golden. This week, we set out our plans for a global Britain that stands up for our people and for our values. This city needs no reminding of the threats from extremists who want to destroy our way of life. When I became Defense Secretary 3 years ago, Daesh terrorists were at the gates of Baghdad, beheading British hostages, throwing gay people off buildings, enslaving women. And when the democratic government of Iraq appealed for help, Britain answered that call. At our conference 3 years ago, I announced the first successful RAF airstrike. As of last night, there have been 1,600 airstrikes. The Army has trained 60,000 Iraqi troops. The Royal Navy has been guarding the United States carriers in the Gulf. Daesh is being defeated. The black flags have been torn down. 3 million people have been freed from its murderous rule. So we should be very proud of the contribution of our armed forces to this success, and I'm delighted to tell you that a new medal will be awarded to those servicemen and women who are doing so much to fight the evil of our time. Conference, terrorism is not the only threat to our security. Russian aggression, with the highest level of submarine activity since the Cold War, thousands of troops exercising on NATO's borders. North Korea, firing ballistic missiles over Japan, cyber attacks on our own National Health Service and on our Parliament. So we are stepping up our response. Today, our armed forces are on operations in more than 25 countries. Conference, they're helping to stop Afghanistan become a haven for terrorists. They're training Ukraine's armed forces to defend themselves against Russian aggression. They're down in Nigeria, helping to tackle terrorists, and they're supporting United Nations peacekeeping in Somalia and South Sudan. And we are leading in NATO. Our army deploying in Estonia and Poland, RAF Typhoons protecting the Black Sea skies, and the Royal Navy leading NATO's maritime task groups. And our armed forces are also ready for anything. Look at the response to the most powerful hurricane ever to hit the Caribbean. RFA Mounts Bay was already on station to provide immediate assistance, helping our people, the people of the British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, Turks and Caicos. Within a week, we had deployed 600 service personnel, 3 helicopters, and 1 foreign secretary. We even flew French supplies from Normandy to Guadeloupe. From Asia Pacific to the Middle East to Europe, we are deepening our defense ties with our allies and partners. And Conference, we have no greater ally than the United States of America. In defense, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, we have a true friend of our nation with whom I work closely on Russia, on North Korea, on the campaign against Daesh. And here at home too, our armed forces are patrolling our skies and seas every hour of every day. Every one of them deserves our gratitude. Conference, there is no better statement to the world of our ambition for Britain than our 2 new aircraft carriers. This is the lion that really roars. Weighing 65,000 tons, the Queen Elizabeth provides 4 acres of sovereign territory deployable around the globe to serve on operations for the next 50 years. Made in Britain, built in 6 shipyards, assembled in Scotland, these carriers are a tribute to British engineering, British technology, British skills, the pride of our nation. And yes, there will be planes on them. We already have 12 F-35 jets with 120 ground crew and pilots training up in the United States before the first squadron arrives in RAF Marham next summer. And what does Jeremy Corbyn have to say in response? He asked, and I quote, "Why do we have to be able to have planes, transport aircraft, aircraft carriers, and everything else to get anywhere in the world?" Well, you don't get very far without them. He wants, Mr. Corbyn, to slash defence spending. He wouldn't authorise drone strikes on terrorists. He would abandon our NATO allies. We must never put the security of our country in the hands of a man whose warped worldview puts him on the side of those who threaten us. We are backing up. We are backing up our global ambition with the 5th biggest defence budget in the world. £35 billion last year, £36 billion this year, £37 billion next year. A budget that our manifesto has committed to increasing by at least 0.5% above inflation in every year of this Parliament. Now, of course, you'll always find retired generals or admirals who'd like even more. But what matters, Conference, isn't just numbers. It's power, stronger, smarter defence. We're now investing £18 billion a year in new equipment. And by the way, 18 billion really is 350 million a week. In the last 3 years, we've started building 7 new ships and submarines for the Royal Navy. Now, I want to see more of our ships out there patrolling the 7 seas. So today, Conference, I'm announcing 800 million of support contracts that will produce faster turnaround and improve the availability of our world-class warships. The Army is getting new attack helicopters and new armoured vehicles built in Wales. The RAF, 16 new transport aircraft have already joined our fleet, and 9 maritime patrol aircraft will start arriving in Lossiemouth. And under Theresa May's leadership, we are also renewing our nuclear deterrent, building 4 Dreadnought-class submarines. North Korea's illegal testing underlines just how irresponsible it would be to scrap the deterrent that protects us. It's all very well Jeremy Corbyn saying he would never use nuclear weapons. But, Conference, Manchester and London are closer to Pyongyang than Los Angeles. Being prepared in the most extreme of circumstances to use nuclear weapons is what separates a prime minister from a pacifist. Now, as we grow our defence budget, we must continue to modernise the way that we work, to modernise how we equip our armed forces, everything from ration packs to medical kit, we will make savings of some £600 million, improving how we test and how we run our test and training sites. We'll deliver another 300 million of further savings. And as those threats to our country intensify, we are now looking right across government to make sure that we are doing enough, spending enough to properly protect our country against all of those threats: cyber, hybrid warfare, rogue states, terrorist attacks. Spending 2% of GDP on defense is the minimum NATO commitment. We meet it, but we should always aim to do better still. Now, one of the great privileges of being Defense Secretary is meeting the outstanding people who make up our armed forces. Many of them started as cadets. This morning, I visited Albion Academy in Salford, one of 150 new cadet units we have already set up. Those cadet units are instilling values of resolve and service, discipline and loyalty, from which we can all learn. So today I am announcing the creation of a further 30 new cadet units in state schools. I also want to attract into our armed forces more ethnic minority and female recruits. I set a target of 10% of recruits in future to come from a black, Asian or minority ethnic background by 2020. We're at 7% at the moment. And they're joining some who've already reached the ranks of Brigadier, Commodore, and Air Commodore. We're also on track to meet our target that 15% of new recruits should be female. But I want to do even better. So I'm opening up every single role in the armed forces to women, so that talent, not gender, determines how far you can go. And I will expect the next Chief of the Defence Staff, whoever he or she may be, to champion more diversity in the leadership of our armed forces. I will also lead a new ministerial covenant and veterans board to look after our armed servicemen and women better when they leave. Often the worst scars are the ones that we can't see. So we must deliver mental health services better tailored for our veterans. Conference, I'm tackling some other injustices too. Thanks to our evidence, thousands of false legal claims against our armed forces have been dismissed. The leading solicitor involved The leading solicitor involved has been struck off, and I've shut down the Iraq Historic Allegations Tribunal. And I'm working with James Brokenshire to make sure that investigations into killings during the Troubles in Northern Ireland focus on terrorists, not on those who protected our people. Conference, under this government, we will go on increasing defence spending. Our magnificent armed forces will go on keeping us safe. But as citizens of a truly global Britain, we have a wider, deeper responsibility. We must defend our values too. Britain, this great country, stands as a beacon to the world for our commitment to freedom, democracy, tolerance, and the rule of law. We face terrorism and aggression from those who hate us not because those values are losing, but because they're winning, because they're values that have lifted millions around the globe out of oppression and poverty. With the fifth biggest defense budget in the world, we have the means. So we must always be ready to answer that call from further away, from fragile democracies, from the very poorest, from the hardest hit. That means deploying our ships, our planes, and yes, our troops on the ground, where we and our allies are asked to help. Standing up for what we believe in, standing up for global Britain. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.